Good evening, Dr. Baban. Am I audible, sir? Uh, can you unmute, sir? So you're on mute. Can you just unmute?
Right. It's okay?
Yeah. I can hear you now. So we shall begin shortly, just waiting for the students to join. And
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. We will be starting in a few minutes. Students kindly ask the others, class representatives, ask the other students from the class to join. Good evening, everyone. To deny people their human rights is to challenge their very humanity. Human Rights Day was established on the 10th of December 1950. 2 years to that day, the United Nations adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Since then, the 10th of December has served as an opportunity to campaign and hold world leaders to account in the defense of rights outlined in the landmark document. The theme for this year is All Human, All Equal, with an emphasis on rebuilding better, fairer, and greener. This means adopting a human rights based approach to sustainable development, which includes striving for a political, social, economic, and ecological justice as a way of creating equality in an unequal world. Today, we will be having two sessions that focuses on the theme, rebuilding fairer, better, and greener. Before we begin our first session, I invite Ms. Marianne, the Coordinator, Department of Humanities, to lead us in prayer.
Good evening, everyone. Let's close our eyes in prayer. God of wisdom, awaken us to our duty to care for the basic needs of all people. Strengthen with hope people denied their human rights and freedoms. Provide us all with the voice to cry out for justice for the poor and the oppressed. By sharing the good things of the earth, may we secure justice and equality for every human being and end all division, and a human society built on love and peace may thrive. Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Marianne. Thank you to each and every one of you for being here with us today. I take this opportunity to welcome the Director, Reverend Father Brian Pereira, SJ, our Principal, Dr. Paul Newman, the Vice Principal, Ms. Dorothy Deepa. I extend a warm welcome to our resource person for the day, Dr. Baban Eliasi. I also welcome all the faculty members and the students present. It's important to celebrate and promote our fundamental human rights. And in that vein, I now introduce our resource person for the day, Dr. Baban Eliasi. Dr. Baban Eliasi is a social analyst and a human rights activist. He was born into a Kurdish minority family in the year 1966 in Iran. As a direct consequence of the Iranian Revolution and the regime change of 1979, his extended family became refugees in the Iraqi Kurdistan. For another 12 years, they lived the volatile life of refugees when, in 1994, they were granted asylum status in Switzerland. 10 years later, he resumed his studies and obtained a bachelor's degree in social work in Geneva, Switzerland. He earned his master's degree in sociology. He holds a doctorate degree in sociology and political science from the University of Geneva, Switzerland. Please note, students, if you have any questions, kindly post them in the chat box. They will be addressed at the end of the session. In his session today, Dr. Baban Eliasi will discuss the idea of striving for justice in an unequal world. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, dear Joel. I would like, first of all, to greet everybody, and I hope they are fine where they are. I would like to thank you, Mr. Paul, also with you for giving me with the others who participated in creating this opportunity for me to talk about this topic about the situation of the Kurds in Iran, in Iraq, Turkey, and Syria.
Sir, you went on mute. Can you unmute?
Yes, you hear me?
Yes, sir.
As you see in the plan of presentation, I have put some topics in the presentation. I will try to talk about them. As you can see, the Kurds are divided and are living in four different countries. In Iran, in Iraq, Turkey, and Syria. So ethnically, the Kurds belong to the family of Indo-Iranian people. The Kurdish language belong to the Iranian branch of the Indian family. Indo-European family of language. For the time being, because of the political situations, there is not a Kurdish standard language. And the Kurdish society is very diverse. There are many religions in Kurdistan. The majority of the Kurds are Sunni Muslims. As identity, the Kurds share a common ethnic identity. And in the level of the population in the Middle East, the Kurds are considered to be the fourth largest ethnic groups in the Middle East. The Kurds, as I told, they are living in Iran, Iraq, Syria, Turkey, and Iraq. The territory of Kurdistan is generally mountainous, and the population is estimated between 35 and 40 millions. As you can see, the big part of the Kurds are living in Turkey, and at least 10 millions in Iran, about 5 millions in Iraq, and 3 millions in Syria. But what I can say here, these estimates these are estimates because of the political reasons. These countries, they don't give the exact number of the Kurds living there. So why don't the Kurds, they don't have a state? Because after the fall of the empire, Ottoman Empire, there were some attempts to give a kind of a state to the Kurds. But when the Turks they became much more powerful after at the end of the First World War, the promise which was given to the Kurds was taken away, and from that period on, the Kurds are struggling to regain their rights, their control on the Kurdish territory. But for the time being, they have not been successful. As you can see, just in Iran, as I told, there is about at least 10 million Kurds, but just one province is recognized as Kurdistan. In Syria and in Turkey, the Kurds are not recognized. Until recently, that in Turkey, the Kurds were called the mountainous Turks. In Syria, since 2011, the situation is changing because of the change which came with the Arab Spring, when there were manifestations in Syria and the Kurds took control of the northern part of Syria. So they have a kind of status over there, but it has not been recognized by the Syrian government. About the Kurds are in all parts of Kurdistan, the Kurds are resisting to the assimilation and operations in those countries. There are political parties in each part, in each country. For example, in Iran, there are several political parties. They seek a kind of internal self-determination, and they are the principal parties. They don't look for a secession of Iran. They look for a kind of federalism where the rights of the Kurds is respected. In Iraq, it is the same. The Kurds have a federal system, but recently there was in 2017 there was a referendum. The Kurds, the majority of the Kurds, they wanted, they voted for independence in Iraq. In Turkey, at the beginning, PKK is one of the principal political party in Turkey. At the beginning, its project was to have an independent Kurdistan for all parts of Kurdistan, but since at least 2 decades, it has changed its politic, and it is looking for a kind of democratic solution within Turkey. In Syria, as I told, the Kurds want their rights to be recognized in the constitution of Syria, but for the time being, there is a resistance from Syrian government. Here I talk about the situation of Kurds in Iran. Since at least 1 century, the Iranian the ideology or the politics of the one state, one language, one culture is on place in Iran. They have the project to assimilate minorities, ethnic and language minorities in Iran. For example, we can in Iran there are at least 6 big ethnic minorities like Kurds, Baluch, Arabs, Azerian Turks, and etc. So the Kurds also are always resisting to these assimilationist projects by the Iranian government, and in the constitution of Iran, for example, a Kurd, as I told earlier, the majority of the Kurds are Sunni Muslims. and in the constitution of Iran, a Muslim, a Sunni Muslim cannot have access to high-ranking post. For example, a Kurd cannot be candidate for the presidency in Iran. It is the case also for the women in Iran; they cannot be candidate for the presidency. And since the revolution in 1979, in Iranian constitutions, there are articles, at least 2 articles, 15 and 19. These articles permit limited teaching of other languages than Persian language, which is official, but these articles never been implemented. And as I told, the resistance for to the assimilation in national system in Iran, which is based, the identity is based on Persian language and Shiite religion. The Kurds have resisted to this at any occasion when there is the center is weak, when there is not stability in Iran. The Kurds take the opportunity to gain their rights. As we can see, in 1946, Kurds succeeded in establishing a republic, a Kurdish republic, which just some months could resist to the pressure from center, from Iran. And in relation to the rights of the Kurds in Iran, once Ayatollah Khomeini told that we are all Muslims, and in Muslim world there is not a minority. Everybody is a brother, and we are equal. We can see also in 1979, because the Kurds asked for freedom for their cultural and political rights. After some negotiations, Ayatollah Khomeini declared a holy war. Holy war is a kind of concept is used in Islam when to justify the killing of others, or especially those who are not Muslims. About the equality, about the rights, about the situation of the Kurds, I think we have the Kurds Iranian Kurdistan is one of the much underdeveloped regions in Iran, and that politic is elaborated to make a situation that the Kurds depend on the center, and the Kurds leave the region to go to the big cities to assimilate in the mainstream politic, which is assimilation of minorities. So what you see is that Kurds, many of them are having a high degree of diplomas, but they are obliged to go to do this kind of jobs, which is semi-legal, because for the authorities in Iran, they don't have the permission to do this. So there are videos also talking about kolbar. Kolbar, it means the one who carries goods in Kurdish. Kolbar, yeah. I put this picture because I know it is not hard to see pictures like that but I had to put it because the Kurds at the beginning of the revolution in 1979, when they were asking for the freedom or a kind of cultural and socio-economic situation, as they were attacked by the Iranian armies, and there were kinds of human rights violations. Here is, I think, about 50 young Kurds. They are executed in one of the airport in Iranian Kurdistan. And the problem is that with the Iranian governments, always they neglect the demand of the Kurds. I give you an example. The leader of one of the Kurdish political parties in Vienna, in Austria, was invited by the Iranian agencies or so-called politicians to discuss a solution for the Kurdish case, but he was assassinated in Vienna, in Austria, in 1989. And another Kurdish leader in Berlin, in Germany, was assassinated also by the Iranian agents. And I can tell you that other Kurdish leaders either assassinated by the Iranians or by system or government, or hanged. So unfortunately, there is a lack of confidence between the Kurds in Iran and those who are governing in Tehran. As I told about these other Kurdish leaders who were either assassinated or hanged by Iranian governments. Here I talk a bit also about Iraqi Kurdistan. As you can see, in 1988, Saddam Hussein, at that time, used chemical gases against a city which is called Halabja in Iraqi Kurdistan. At least 5,000 Kurds, among them children, women, were dead, and hundreds of thousands fled to Turkey. The situation in 1991, just after the Iraq attacked Kuwait in 1990, then there was coalition attacked Iraqi army in Kuwait, and at that time the Kurds began uprising in 1991. And there were also threats by the Iraqi government to use another time chemical gases. So more than 1 million Kurds fled to Turkey and Iran. And after that, there was an international intervention to put end to the Iraqi government violations. So they created a safe zone in Iraqi Kurdistan, and from that time on, the situation changed for the Kurds. There was, in 1992, there was a election, a parliament, and the situation for the Kurds is going for much more better stability. Kurds in Iraq. Yeah, as I told you, I can tell you that the Kurds in Iraq enjoy a much more better situation than the Kurds in other parts of Kurdistan. I put these pictures. This picture is of the cemetery of in Halabja. Those are the name of the person who have been killed in that chemical attacks. And another concept here I have put the Anfal. Anfal is a concept was used in Islam history. Saddam used this concept when his army attacked the Kurds, and at that campaign, at least, but there is not exact number, at least 180,000 Kurds, women, men, children were disappeared. And yeah. I told you earlier that the Kurds in Iraq, because however, there is in the Iraqi constitution, the Kurds have a federal status, but when the central government in Baghdad is become much more strong, or they do their best to the articles who has they have agreed after 2003, after the fall of Saddam Hussein. They are trying to regain back these articles, and they don't apply those articles that should resolve the problems of the Kurds. For example, there are cities like Kirkuk, which is very, very rich in petrol. That city has been, the demography have been changed, and the Arabs have been installed over there. The central government don't want to normalize those cities and those regions. So, as long as the center is strong, they try to not apply or to comply with the articles they have agreed on in the constitution. As I told, the largest Kurds are in Turkey. Estimates talks about 15 to 20 millions, but I heard once the former advisor of Obama, Thomas Friedman, he was talking about at least 40% of the Turks are Kurds. It means that if we see that the Turkey is maybe about 80 millions, so the number of Kurds are much more than one we have talking about. The Kurds in Turkey, as I told us, there were very, very grave violations of human rights against the Kurds. The Kurdish language until recently was forbidden, and the Kurds were considered to be mountainous Turks, because Turkey didn't recognize that there is a Kurdish minority in Turkey. And to react or to face with this repression, PKK is one of the main political parties. It is armed, and also it has a political wing, which are since 2012 or something like that, the political wing of PKK. They are participating in the elections in Turkey, and they could gain some years ago at least 80 seats in the parliament. So, and that political party, there are also among them Turks, and its leader, which is called Salahuddin Demirtas, is actually at prison in Turkey. So maybe you have heard about the Kurds or Rojava. In Kurdish, Rojava, it means west in Kurdish. So the Kurds in Syria, as you can see, until recently, hundreds of thousands of Kurds were deprived of their Syrian nationality. And because the Syrian government considered them to be outsider, not to be Syrians. And this politic changed in 2011 when there was uprisings in Syria. From 1960s, the government of Syria had a politic of Arabization. I mean that by that they wanted to change the demographic the demography of the Kurdish regions, and this politic continued until 2011, before there were uprising in Syria. So after 2011, when there were uprisings, Syria draw back its army from Kurdish region, and from that period on, the Kurds take the control of those cities and regions, and they are governing the Kurdish region. But the central government is taking much more force recently because of the oppositions in Syria one after others, they were defeated by the government, and now there is that fear that the government will try to regain these regions, which are governed by the Kurds in Syria. I have put two pictures here. One is the city of Kobani, which as in 2014, it was encircled by the Islamic State militants, or Daesh. In French, we can call it Daesh. It was encircled at least 3 months, but finally the Kurds, with the support of the coalition army, included United States and others, they could defeat the Islamic State. And one of the picture is of women. I have put because the women have a big role in those combats, and they participate with men in combating Islamic State. I have put this slide. I just wanted to show that the politic of assimilation of Kurds have begun since at least one century ago, at least since 1920. And at the same time, the Kurds have led dozens of rebellion because they resist, and because they don't want to be assimilated in those countries. So until recently, until 1960s, most of the Kurdish revolt were led by the Kurdish religious leaders. There was a mix of religion and nationalism in those movements. But if I compare the situation now with at least 1980s, the situation is much more better for the Kurds. Because since 1991, the Kurds in Iraq, they enjoy a kind of autonomy, and now they have a federal system. The Iraqi Kurdistan is not so. It's not they have. There are also problems in Iraqi Kurdistan, but there are also progress over there. Situation in Syria is not stable. As I told that maybe there will be a kind of recognition of Kurdish state in Syria in the constitution, or maybe the government will try to regain that regions. But generally, the central government in Syria, in Iraq, are much more weaker than the 80s and 90s. In Iran also, the situation can change, and the relations between the Iranian government and the world in general, they have problems. They have economical problems. They have political problems. They have in external policies. They are in confrontation with many countries. So as long as the central government is weak, there is hopes for the minorities, ethnic minorities, and the religious minorities in Iran to gain some of their rights. We can go ahead with the slide if. So I put some here, some pictures about maybe some of them. You have heard about the Peshmerga. Peshmerga is the one who goes ahead of, who is ready to sacrifice his life for a purpose. So what I wanted to tell you here is that the women participate more and more actively in the struggle for the Kurdish right in all parts of Kurdistan, especially in Syria. They are much more present in participating in the struggle. In the armed struggles, I mean. I wanted to show this picture, the Nowruz celebration. I think many Iranian people, inside and outside, and also in India, I think, they are celebrating Nowruz. But what is important, I tell here, is that the Kurds have politicized this celebration. These pictures are in Turkey, because in Turkey, normally the Turks don't celebrate, as far as I know, the Nowruz. Nowruz, Iranian people celebrate it. So the Kurds use this celebration as a kind of cultural symbol, and also to mobilize the Kurdish population in Turkey. Yeah. I put you some these two pictures. The Kurdistan is very, very, the landscape is at the same time mountainous and also flat, like this, some desert also. So the weather in winter is very, very cold, and in summer is very, very warm. I just wanted you have to see this kind of pictures that shows a part of geography in Kurdistan. This city is Iraqi Kurdistan. It is called Amedi. Thank you for your attention. I finished here my presentation. I am here. I'm ready to answer to your questions.
Thank you, sir. Your description of the human rights violation and the displacement of the Kurds was both enlightening and moving. I think your lecture comprehensively covered all aspects of the situation, and I thank you for shedding light on these important topics. I now request Ms. Marianne to moderate the question and answer session. Over to you.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, sir. It was very enlightening to listen to your lecture, and it shed a lot of light on the Kurds. I think this is both a professional and a personal topic of interest for you. And thank you so much for sharing a lot about this particular topic with us today. We have a few questions, which I'll just read out if you could answer them. In a modern society, how can we as an international community address institutional discrimination that you described in one of your earlier slides?
I think for example, I'm talking about Iran, which is a multi-ethnic country, and since at least one century they have been doing their best to assimilate these minorities and ethnic and religious minorities. And at the beginning of the revolution in Iran, they have put some kind of articles which clearly, explicitly discriminates once the situation of women. For example, in Iran, a woman cannot be a candidate for some posts. So about the ethnic minorities, the Kurds, they are not asking for secession in Iran. They, for example, Kurdish names in Iran is forbidden. You cannot name your children with Kurdish name. In recent weeks, in Tehran, one of the members of the council has issued a statement that the Kurdish, Turkish, and Baluchi Arab, I think Baluchi words should not be used for the shops or for other establishment. So in a kind of system like this, there will not be peace. There will not be equal access to governing possibilities to be to occur if they want to have access to some kind of institutional position or governmental position. They should accept the ideology of the system in place. So many the big parts of the Iranian population, because half of the Iranian population are ethnic minorities. The Persian minority is not the majority in Iran. And if we add these minorities to the women, we see at least about 70 or 80% of the population in Iran are discriminated in the constitution, by the constitution. So the chances for equal access to rights is very limited in a country like that.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Nikat Unnisa. Could you explain about the use of chemical weapons against the Kurds, especially Saddam Hussein's use of gases against the Kurds?
Yes, exactly. It was not the first time that in 1988 Saddam used chemical gas. It used it in other situations, but it in a limited space. About what it used in Halabja, it was the media. It was many journalists and many do you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Okay. So the difference was that there was so many killed and so many wounds, and those people who were wounded, they were taken to Iran to be hospitalized, and some of them were taken outside Iraq. So it was for that reason that the mediatization or media, they couldn't, the Iraqi government couldn't keep it secret anymore.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Miriam from 3rd JPS. How can the international community help in emancipating the Kurds and help them in general?
I think it depends on the interest of the government and international communities. If they have interest to help the Kurds to have a kind of justice and to gain their cultural or socio-economic rights, but sometimes political interest is much more than humanitarian humanist interest, and we know the Kurds. We know we have a proverb. It says that the Kurds, they don't have friends, just the mountain. We have but there is, as long as there is resistance and resilience. So I am optimistic about the situation of the Kurds, because many decades ago they tried to destroy or to assimilate the Kurds, but we resisted. Sometimes we have a survival strategy, and the world is changing, and so with the technology like that, it is difficult to kill the Kurds and to violate their rights, and the world is unaware. So I hope in this dialogue we the Kurds can find much more friends from India and elsewhere, and to get interested in studying the Kurdish question.
Thank you, sir. I'm sure that talks like this will definitely encourage people to reflect as well as become a part of the efforts in solving the Kurdish question, as you mentioned. The next question is from Manoj from 3rd EJP. In the context of the women being a part of the Kurdish resistance, how do you feel that gender plays a role in fighting for human rights?
I think the question of women, I think as long as they participate in the with men beside men in struggles, and later it will be difficult to ask them to go home to like a householder, and more they are aware of their rights and more they are vocal, more they are they want to be to have their rights, and I see that because I heard in some situations that women participated in the struggle, and then the men asked them to go home and to tell it is no need. But in Kurdistan, and especially in Rojava in Syria, no women are part of the daily activities. They are for example, they are leaders. They have their military groups, and all the situation is held by the women. So I think I see it very, very positively for the situation of women in general and women in Kurdistan.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I think that women should be involved in the emancipation of their communities. I definitely agree with you. The next question is from YouTube Live. How did you find it when you were assimilating into a host country?
In Iran? In Iran?
Yes. How did you feel when you, yeah?
Really, honestly, it is very, very difficult. I still have problem speaking French, because not French, sorry, Persian. I was young. I was about 12 years or 13 years. I didn't speak well. I didn't speak Persian at school. I was mocked by other students, and that is that complex of inferiority that is created interiorized. I mean that interiorization, that I am from an inferior minority, my language is inferior, my culture is inferior, and the other are superior, and the other are superiors. So and there is a kind of humanly, I don't want to be but I think there was so much injustice, and one day I want somebody comes and to ask pardon for what they did to us, and so yeah, it is so difficult. I think to be to understand what a person who has his identity has been rejected, to understand that person, you should have empathy, you should be in the place of this person to understand it.
Definitely, sir. Of course. I come from a psychology background, so empathy is very important. Empathy and compassion when dealing with things relating to social justice as well. We have one last question. We're running short of time, so maybe this will be the last question. What, according to you, are the key aspects of the Kurdish identity?
Key aspect of the Kurd. I more and more I know the Kurds, their history, their culture, the society. I know it is very rich, very diverse, and very this diversity. I think and the tolerance. For example, I can give you one example that in Iraqi Kurdistan there are at least 1 million refugees over there. However, the Kurdistan is not a government, it is not a country. And I was in Halabja, and I saw many people, when in 1991, the Iraqi government had to bring back its army from Kurdistan. Many of those army were in Halabja. And the people of Halabja, they didn't recourse to take revenge of those people, and no one was harmed when they were pulling back to Baghdad. So I think that the tolerance and the diversity, because many people are now converting from Islam to Christianism, from Islam to Zoroastrianism, and also to other religions. So I think I'm proud about that aspect of Kurdish society.
Thank you, sir. I think tolerance and diversity should be the identity of all communities. So thank you so much for sharing with us. That brings us to the end of our question and answer session. I will hand it over to Joel, sir, once again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marianne. I now request Ms. Vismaya from the Department of English to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you. Let me begin by thanking the Almighty for their grace. I extend my gratitude to our resource person, Dr. Ediasi, for spending time with us today, for sharing his insights on striving for social justice in an unequal world. Thank you so much, sir. I would like to thank Father Brian Pereira, our director, Dr. Paul Newman, principal, and Ms. Dorothy Deepa, vice principal. I'd also like to thank Ms. Marianne, Humanities Coordinator, and Mr. Joel Rajan, HOD Sociology, for facilitating the webinar. I'd like to thank Mr. Charles and team for the technical support. Lastly, I'd like to thank our faculty members and students for being here. Thank you all. Hope you have a great day ahead.
Thank you, ma'am. That brings us to the end of this session. Thank you once again, sir, for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your valuable insights and thoughts. We're looking forward to hear from you in the future. By this, we come to the end of the session. Students, you are requested to type your register number in the chat for your attendance. The next session will begin at 7:05 p.m. You can join the next session using the same link. Students, the next session will begin at 7:05 p.m. You can join the next session using the same link. You can go for a break now and join using the same link. Thank you. Thank you once again, sir.
Thank you, dear Joel. Thank you also to your equipe and to your colleagues. And it was a big pleasure to be with you. And I am very honored that to have you to be interested in the Kurdish situation.
Thank you, sir. It was a pleasure to have you with us as well, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
they've got.
Students on the YouTube live link as well, please share your register number so that we can record your attendance. Attendance will only be given to students who respond by 6:45 p.m. Thank you. Good evening, sir. This is Technology Department. Okay. Prashant, a little late, sir. He's having some technical difficulties, but we'll start.
Hello. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah.
How are you?
Fine. Thank you.
Good evening, sir.
Sir.
Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes. I can hear you.
Good evening, Chayan, sir.
Yeah. I can hear you. Yeah.
Welcome back to the second session. Just give me 2 minutes, sir.
Sure.
Now I'm. Good evening, everyone. Can you all hear me? Okay. Sorry for the technical delay. So let us begin the second session. In the first session, we heard from Dr. Papan about the displacement of Kurd community and how it has led to the differences in terms of the rich and the poor. So there's a huge disparity between the rich and the poor. And in the second session, we have gathered here in order to discuss on how we can build better, cleaner, and have a human rights based approach, sustainable development. Today, when we talk human rights approach, we are also thinking in the terms of access to resources across the globe. And today we see there's a huge disparity between the rich and the poor. And the resources are accessed only by the richer sections of the society, whereas the poor sections of the society do not have access to the resources. And yesterday we have observed Human Rights Day. And in context of yesterday's Human Rights Day's observation, we have organized this webinar. For today's webinar, we have with us Dr. Cherian for the second session. I'm sure most of you know Dr. Cherian. So on behalf of the director, the principal, the vice principal, and the organizing committee, I take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Cherian to this webinar. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Before we start with the lecture, I would like to give a brief introduction about Dr. Cherian. Dr. Cherian Alexander is served as an associate professor of English in the Department of English at St. Joseph's College from 1982 to 2018. And he was also the HOD in the Department of English. He was born in 1958 and had most of his education in Bangalore. He graduated from our very own institution, that is St. Joseph's College, with a BSc in 1979 and went on to do CMC Vellore, where he did a PG diploma in medical microbiology. Then he shifted his academic field completely and joined MA English at Bangalore University in 1980. After graduating, he joined St. Joseph's College as a lecturer in the year 1982. He taught there for 36 long years and is still associated with the college in an advisory capacity. He has also completed his MPhil from Bangalore University in 1989 and his PhD from Bangalore University in 1998. His doctoral work was on post-war Eastern European literature, particularly the effect of totalitarian regimes on regions' literature. Dr. Alexander has I'm sorry for that technical error. I think I got disconnected. I would like to continue introducing Dr. Cherian Alexander. Dr. Alexander has written on issues on literature, culture, and arts for papers and magazines. He has edited a book of short stories by Bangalore writers entitled Many Rooms, Many Voices. An essay of his was included in the BA English textbook of Bangalore University, prescribed from 2002 to 2000. He has also given several radio talks both on All India Radio and Gyan Vani. He has served on textbook committees of both the PU Board and Bangalore University, and he has guided 4 research scholars for PhD. He is often invited as resource persons to seminars and workshops on language and literature, And in 2010, he traveled extensively in the United States as a recipient of a prestigious study cum travel grant of the International Visitors Leadership Program for Scholars of American Literature, sponsored by the Cultural Relations Wing of the United States government. Dr. Cherian Alexander's first priority is to be an inspiring and stimulating teacher, and he finds it fulfilling when his students come back and tell him that his classes gave them new insights, not just into literature, but also into many aspects of life. This is a very brief introduction of Dr. Cherian Alexander. And for the record of all this present here, I would also like to state Dr. Cherian, we were at St. Joseph's Evening College also was lucky to have Dr. Cherian Alexander teaching our MA English students. Yes, sir. I thank you for this, for accepting our invitation and to and for the, being part of today's program. So over to you, sir. Thank you.
And just a few preliminaries. I hope my audio is clear. You can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Video in my room, the lighting is not all that okay, but I hope you can see me.
Yes, sir. You are visible, sir.
Visible. Okay. That's one. And then about sharing screen, what should we do? I can press on the share screen here.
Yes, yes, sir. You can press on the share screen. You are.
There is a video also.
Yes, sir.
I don't know whether that will work, but I'll try it.
Sure.
We could begin with that, and then it's a short video.
Sure, sir.
Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Fine. If at any time I'm not coming through or something, please feel free to interrupt me.
Sure, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So, dear students and everyone at St. Joseph's Evening College, especially Professor Prashant for inviting me, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much, Prashant, for the invitation. Now, I'm going to refer to my lecture notes, but I can share that with you so that with each point you also know where we are located. I hope that will be fine. So I'll just see if I can share screen. First of all, let me just say I'm not really qualified because I'm not someone from the economics field, although I have some general understanding of economics through general reading. So the insights I'm going to bring are that of you could say a voracious reader on many subjects. Okay, so in that sense, don't expect that kind of professional thing from me as far as the discipline of economics is concerned. But having been a student of literature, because many writers have dealt extensively with these issues, I will be happy to bring those insights to you. So I'm a kind of middleman, just conveying to you some very good and powerful insights that I have received through my acquaintance with a host of different writers, both fiction and non-fiction. We begin with the whole question of human rights. And before we start, I'd like to try playing this video. I will, is there something I have to do in order to make sure the sound also comes through, or I can just press share screen and it will automatically happen?
You can click on share screen, sir.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that. Can you see the screen? There is a video called Doomed by Displacement.
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Yes, it's visible. And now you must check, I'll play for a few seconds. Just tell me if the sound is coming through.
Yes, sir.
Is the sound okay?
No, sir, it was not very clear. Could you play it again, sir?
Is there something for sound separately?
No, sir, it should play actually. Yes, now it's audible.
It's audible, okay.
Yes.
But this is a 6 minute. Beg your pardon?
Volume on your system, sir.
Beg your pardon?
You may have to slightly increase the volume, sir.
Oh, on mine, okay. This is the maximum I can get. But by the way, don't worry too much because everything is subtitled.
Sure, sir.
So the point is just to see what this is about. This is a brief video of about 6 minutes. It's about a group of people who are displaced by one of India's earliest dams, the Hirakud Dam. Okay. When we talk about development in India, we often think of dams, and then we hardly think about the human rights issues connected with the big dams because we are all beneficiaries, but we don't spare too much of a thought for those who have been displaced when these big dams have been built. So this video is a bit of an eye-opener that tells you what has happened.
पानी देने के लिए जो अपना घर छोड़े हैं उनको आज अच्छे से घर नहीं मिल पा रहा है, वो यहाँ पर रोजगार करने के लिए परेशान हो रहे हैं। आज उसी डैम से बाकी बड़े बड़े प्लांट हो गए हैं, वही प्लांट वाले पैसे कमा रहे हैं।
मुन्ना देशमागम आणि जीविगली का आम्ही रातको विस्थापित हमारे किसी सुविधा नहीं ना स्कूल नहीं ना जो पूरी में परवान आधी रात को तो दिया घरे बसकर वीडियो बनाई जो पैसा कमाने लगी 8 क्लास पढ़ी के घरे बसी रही
श्रीकांत से पानी गाँव आमर गाँव सरकार जेन पट्टा देमी एंता सेंता सब आमर 56 वर्ष लानो पट्टा पर भी नहीं पारबार आमर सरकार खाली आसुजन कहून तहसीलदार आउे नापुजे तार किसी पट्टा नहीं दबार ना जेबे गले खाली हेबा हेबा कहून केवे हेबार चांस नहीं आमर जानते कि तेणु पानी असुविधा लगे भी आम बहुत कहूँ खरा दिन खरा 4 मास हेले टैंकर दी पानी पठे दौन 2 मास पठे 2 मास नहीं टाकीर सुविधा करुन टाकी के सक्सेसफुल नहीं करवा ओरा दिया छाड़ी दौन काम मेरा नाम दिना कृष्ण दास है, मैं बलवतपुर रहने वाला हूँ। हम लोग का जमीन चला गया, हम लोग को कमाने का सुविधा भी नहीं है। हम लोग कभी मछली ला के बेचता हूँ, बेच के हम लोग खाते हैं। तो मछली का टाइम में खत्म हो गया, मछली नहीं मिलने से हम लोग 10-20 किलोमीटर जाना पड़ता है मछली का काम में। गाँव का तो बहुत आदमी गरीब है, वही डैम से जो जितना जमीन चला गया है, इसलिए क्या करेंगे। गाँव का जो तकलीफ है इसलिए क्या हम लोग रहते हैं वही, तो गाँव से कहाँ चले जाएंगे। इसलिए
सुविधा नहीं ना पानी सुविधा नहीं किसी नहीं आम पीढ़ी मन की चलुछु 3 बाटे 15-20 टका भी नहीं पाया पीढ़ी बने करी
विकास के लिए हम सब कुछ पैसा करवाने करते हैं तो गवर्नमेंट को गवर्नमेंट एक्टिविटी बनता है फंड बनता है गवर्नमेंट का हमको शिक्षा स्वास्थ्य सब हर तरह का हमको सेशन फैसिलिटी मिलना चाहिए तो नहीं मिल पा रहा है ये जब हुआ था सरकार बोला कि हमारे इलेक्ट्रिक मिलेगा पानी आएगा हरित क्रांति होगा बहुत अनाज होगा इलेक्ट्रिसिटी निकलेगा उसके बाद में बोला कि हम मछली पालन होगा तो सब तरह से पहले हो गया जितना एजुकेशन पहले था अभी उससे 30% से भी ज्यादा क्या फायदा हुआ तो पानी हमारा गाँव किनारे में रिजर्वर के किनारों में जितना गाँव
webinar is going on.
One students committee in 1989. They said that by 1990 March, their wants should be solved and compensation should be given. In 1971 only, we have some policy of prior to that, there are no realization policy.
Okay, I'll stop here. I hope you can hear me. Okay. You can see what is displayed here. There are more than 40 million displaced people in the country who are affected by more than 4,000 major or medium dams and barrages since 1947. What sustainable solutions do we have for them? Let me go to my notes. We'll begin with the prevailing discourse of human rights and ask ourselves what human rights is, to what they mean to different groups of people. Is this screen visible? One of you must keep telling me if things are okay.
Visible.
Visible. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'll because I'll keep changing screen. Okay.
Sure.
Right. Now, we all generally think of human rights and the conversation around human rights, etc. Whenever those conversations happen, we think of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So let's just go there and have a quick look at that. Here is this poster, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which puts in very simple language each of the articles. I won't go into all of them, there are so many. When children are, the first one says, when children are born, they are free and each should be treated in the same way. They have reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a friendly manner. Article 2 says everyone can claim the following rights, despite a different sex, different skin color, speaking a different language, thinking different things, believing in another religion, etc. Freedom, then a right to live in freedom and safety. Nobody has a right to treat you as his or her slave. Nobody has a right to torture you. You should be legally protected. Law must be the same for everyone. If you must go on trial, this should be done in public, etc., etc., etc. So many different things. And it is a total of some 30 articles. Each one is explained here in simple language in this poster. We don't have time to go through all of them, but you'll notice that this is the basis or the foundation of today's concept of human rights. It's important for every one of you students to read this document for yourselves, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now, the question is, human rights are meant for whom? Are they meant for human beings as individuals, or human beings in collective groups, as in collectives, or both? Now, most of our legal systems, modern legal systems, are based on the rights actually of individuals. But the trickier part is when people are in collectives, what happens to their rights? And we look at constitutions such as ours, like the Constitution of India, which protects individual human rights, but which also has what are known as directive principles. That is, for the greater good, one must be willing to sacrifice, which means that, for example, if people in Bangalore want electricity, then you must build a dam somewhere, and that dam is far away from the city because you can build it only where there is a river. But once you build a dam, that's going to submerge the reservoir created will submerge entire areas, and that would mean that people living there will have to be asked to move. They are promised some compensation, and they're told that they can go somewhere else. The government will take care of them. They will be compensated. But we have seen that in India, this promise has never been kept. Thousands and thousands of people who are called internally displaced people, internally displaced groups, have not been given compensation. And most people really, what the compensation that they really want is land. If you pay them money, that because they're not part of a very strong money economy, they won't know how to handle it because they are traditionally people who have been in farming. They don't have the skills to big entrepreneurs or whatever. So it is land that they need. But that, as you can see in the case of the Hirakud Dam, it's been more than 50 years, half a century, and many, many people have not, been generations, the 2 generations have come and gone, and they've not got their rights. So we have to ponder about rights to individuals on the one hand, but also rights for collectivities, collective groups. Now, when we think of collectives, we are thinking of people coming together as families or clans or as ethnic groups, based on their religion or their community, village, city, country. Then the highest collectivity is, of course, as globe or as a planet. Okay, so we just looked at how whether the Universal Declaration of Human Rights applies to all of them. Does human rights only include, do human rights only include things like protection from torture, protection from arbitrary arrest, the right to have a magistrate, the right to speak in your own defense in court, the right to a free trial, free and fair trial. Often we think only of these things. But what about rights to land, rights to water, access to all these facilities, resources, etc.? When we think of that, those also come under human rights. And I think today there is a greater need to think about the human rights of groups, such as the one we saw in that video. Now, today we live in a world where the sources of threat to human rights, which are the sources, from where do the threats come? I put a small list over there. You can start with abusive individuals, maybe someone in a neighboring house, or someone who starts attacking you or assaulting you, or being assaulted on the street, etc. That's a violation. Then groups who are racist or intolerant, hate groups, which can form a mob, like the lynch mobs that we saw, and these can be formed on the basis of religion or ethnicity, etc., linguistics or language or whatever, and they can also end up violating human rights. Mobs can attack houses of worship of minority communities, or then you can have terror groups, terrorist groups. I've not listed that, but terrorist attacks are also violations of human rights. But you also have states that violate human rights. That is, governments can violate human rights. The legal system can, if it is indifferent to the legal rights of people, can also be violative of human rights. And then you have big corporations that can violate human rights. Business corporations can violate human rights. We have examples of all these all around us and happening all the time. In marriages, for example, you have abusive husbands. Domestic violence is of course a violation of human rights. Gender justice is violated there. Then you have racist groups and intolerant groups all over the world in different countries, and where minorities are under threat, and hate groups, etc., terrorist groups. Now, how can the state violate human rights? As we can see here in the video that you saw just a while ago, you see the state, the government, which is supposed to provide compensation, is violating human rights by not giving people what they have a right to get, namely right to fair compensation. Endless delays, bureaucratic oppression. People are being shunted from pillar to post, trying to get their rightful share of land or compensation. How do corporates violate human rights? Big mining corporations, for example, have a lot of money, and with money power, they can buy politicians, and these politicians can dilute the laws of a land. And the result is that these corporations can go and start mining operations in places, where human beings live, displacing people, but also, through their mining. The thing about corporations, basically, to keep in mind is this: business corporations. It's not very easy to bring a corporation to justice, because there is still a lot of ambiguity about whether a corporation is to be treated as an individual or as a group. And, so some of the legal proceedings, directed against corporations end up falling through the cracks. Look at what happened to the, Union Carbide in 1984, which, in Bhopal, because of its negligence, there was the famous gas tragedy, Bhopal gas tragedy, and thousands of people, hundreds lost their lives, thousands crippled and handicapped, and have to live a whole lifelong with disabilities. And yet it was so difficult to get the corporation to give adequate compensation, and even now full justice has not been done. So this is the problem with corporations, because essentially, what is a business corporation? It is a group of people, a large group of people, but with a few of them having majority shares. So that is already an elite within an elite, and they have enormous power, but very little accountability to to governments, to parliaments, etc. So corporations can keep easily bending the rules and getting away with it because they have enormous lobbying power. And money, as someone said, money talks. In all democracies, this is how corporations subvert democratic processes. I'm not saying that all corporations are always guilty, but many, many large corporations, in fact, work this way. To give you one example, for a long time, very long time, the big tobacco companies, they are giant corporations with revenues in billions of dollars. These have much more turnover than many, many countries' GDP put together, you know. Whole countries are poorer than these companies, you know. But for a long, long time, these corporations did everything they could to prevent laws against tobacco consumption, rather laws that regulated it. For example, just to get a warning sign on a cigarette packet, you know, that this is just the earliest one was just it's injurious to health. Corporation fought very hard to prevent that. And eventually, when there was a lot of public pressure, especially from the medical fraternity, they finally gave in. So it's really difficult to bring corporations to book for violations of human rights. This is something to be kept in mind. We have many, many examples in India of corporations, not following environmental regulations, because you see it affects their profit margins. So who are corporations really accountable to ultimately? They're not accountable to citizens. They're not accountable to civil societies. They are accountable to parliaments and governments and so on, but they have their own clever ways of subverting it. Many corporations actually do, while a few corporations, some of them, to be fair, follow all the rules, all the regulations. But there are many big, you'll be surprised, that many big corporations with big reputations will do everything they can to cut corners and to compromise on environmental regulations by paying off politicians, you see. Famous example, Volkswagen, even this German company was bending environmental rules. You see, so their real accountability is only to their shareholders. And to the shareholders, what is it that they promise? Profits, nothing else, profits. And what do the shareholders want? Greater share dividends. You see, so their accountability is ultimately only to their shareholders. So given a chance, if the state looks the other way, they'll happily bend regulations that are meant to protect citizens' health. For example, all over the world, mining companies allow a lot of pollutants into streams, into rivers, etc. Many industries do that too, very, very toxic chemicals and end up getting into water bodies, with the result that people's health can be badly affected, and so on. But the corporations, because they want profits now, many of them, don't care. This is one more area that we often don't pay enough attention to: human rights abuses by big business corporations. All of this is happening, of course, in the context that we all know very well at the moment, which is we are living on a planet that is severely, severely threatened, in terms of its health. The thing is, we live on a finite planet. This planet on which we live is the only inhabitable planet that we know of. Mars is too cold and too dry. Venus is too hot. And you go further up, they're either too close to the sun, Mercury and so on. Everything is melting all the time. and then further away, they're too far away from the sun, and so things don't really, things are not conducive for human habitation. This is the only planet we have. And the thing about it is that everything we do, in some way or the other, affects the planet, either positively or negatively. And there is this notion in economics, economic thought and economic circles, when people keep talking about growth, economic growth. And most of the time, everyone is talking about whether growth is falling or growth is expanding or whatever. But one of the things that economists now are forced to consider is that there are limits to growth which are set by the planet itself. These are what we call ecological limits. There is, and when we cross those limits, we threaten ecosystems, we threaten sustainability of life on this planet. So you have heard, I'm sure, and I don't need to tell you about the threat of global warming and climate change that we at the moment face. Now, let me give you some effects of global warming and climate change that we are able to see immediately around us already. Very briefly, how did we come to this situation of global warming and climate change? And why are we finding it so difficult to find solutions to this problem? You see, the carbon dioxide that any burning activity that we do as human beings, any burning activity we do, or anything that we burn, automatically needs oxygen, right? So it burns in oxygen, and and most of the things that burn are made of carbon. So the carbon combines with oxygen to produce carbon dioxide. Now, what are the things we burn? All of us are guilty as far as this is concerned, but there are degrees of guilt, as I said earlier. When you start a fire, you are producing carbon dioxide, whether it's in a campfire or our own cooking, we are producing carbon dioxide. And in order for our electricity to come to us, one way of producing electricity is to burn coal. And that produces an enormous amount of carbon dioxide. And of course, hydroelectricity does not do that, but burning coal does. But in India, I think 80% of our electricity is generated by burning coal. Fossil fuels, every time we burn fossil fuels, and in our vehicles, two-wheelers, cars, etc., we are burning fossil fuels, combustion, and that automatically creates carbon dioxide. So now, when did this begin? Not very long ago. It's just in the history of a 3.5 billion year planet. What is 200 years? It's nothing. It's just like a little twinkling of an eye. It's just about 200 years since the Industrial Revolution, in fact, that we have moved from the older method of getting all our energy from renewable sources, that is from water power, wind power, etc. Even if with firewood also, that you grow back trees, and the trees reabsorb carbon dioxide. So these were the ways in which human beings were using renewable energy. But the moment coal began to be used to run machines, and the Industrial Revolution happened about 200 years ago, first in Britain and then in Germany, and then it began to spread all over the world. Massive amounts of iron and steel could be produced now, or these things were not possible on that scale earlier. So the result then was we entered a new phase in human history, and from then on, all the things that we call development, has had a side effect, has had cost. And the cost is global warming, because carbon dioxide is a heat trapping gas. The sun's rays that come to hit the surface of the earth, it gets reflected back, but the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere prevents it. Some amount of carbon dioxide is necessary in the atmosphere, because otherwise the world would become very, very cold. So the optimum number was passed long time ago, and everything now is in excess and becoming more and more excessive. So the optimum amount of carbon dioxide was some 70, 80 years ago, maybe, or 50 years ago, optimum. Then slowly it began increasing beyond what is a balanced amount. So the thing is that we have global warming on a bigger scale, and this is what is called anthropogenic global warming, that is human induced. There are other factors also for global warming about which we can do nothing. But we human beings have been extremely guilty in making global warming worse. By the way, can I check with Prashant, sir, if I have enough time, or how much time?
Yes, sir, you have time till 8:15, sir. Then we can have question answer session, sir.
Okay, thank you. So far, so good, Prashant?
Yes, sir, going good, sir.
Yeah, audible, everything?
Yes, it's very clear, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you.
So the result is this, that all over the world, the effects of global warming can be felt. We've seen that one thing that happens with warming is that when the Earth's temperature, average temperature goes up, at the moment it is 1 point something, but if it reaches 1.5, then we will cross a threshold. Already, the effects are beginning to be felt. What are some of the effects? Large-scale melting of ice, in the Antarctic and the Arctic regions. When these things happen, the water level in the oceans goes up, because a lot of the water on the planet is actually blocked in the form of ice. When that ice starts melting, it starts coming into the oceans. Where else can it go? So the ocean levels rise. And many parts of the world which are at sea level, islands like the Maldives, for example, all over the Pacific, you have islands like the Fiji Islands, Solomon Islands, etc. These island nations are the first victims, because when there is high sea level rise, in another 20-30 years, if this present trend continues, their countries will be gone, will go underwater. And the point is this, if those people are saying, look, we didn't do anything, we lived very simple lifestyles, we didn't live high carbon intensive lifestyles, and for the fault of others like the advanced industrial nations, we are now on the verge of extinction. We will have no choice but to become refugees, climate refugees, and go to parts of the world where we can manage to live free of floods and water. So can you see already there is this asymmetry that's happening. That's why at the recent COP summit in Glasgow, the island nations of the world made a very, very strong plea to the rest of the world. In fact, like sending out an SOS, you people should be very, very strict about future controls on global warming, on fossil fuel emissions. But unfortunately, the big nations of the world, the ones that produce the most global warming material or the most carbon emitting nations, didn't do enough, didn't go far enough to meet these commitments. And so that was rather disappointing. So you can see already that when this happens, you have human rights violations of large sections of the population that become victims for no fault of theirs. And so that is the issue today. take the two things that we are experiencing here in Bangalore, but people are experiencing all over the world. The pandemic, for example. One of the reasons for in fact, probably the most important reason for the pandemic, if you look at it carefully, is this. Viruses that live in animal hosts deep inside forests, their entire life cycles are spent there. Now, with our modern model of development, which is very, very consumeristic, forests are being cut all over the world, either to make way for plantation crops, coffee, tea, palm oil, rubber, sugarcane, etc., or for mining or whatever. So when we do that, these animals that these viruses that are in animals and circulating inside them only for centuries, they begin to then break into the human world. So that's the reason why the pandemic. In fact, this warning was given by ecologists and biologists and others, and climate scientists and environmental scientists long ago, more than 30, 40 years ago. And in fact, they said that we can expect pandemics because of this, what's happening. It is completely logical. There's no need for any magical revelation from some angel or God or whatever for this. I mean, it's a common sense science. So this was predicted by science. And yet we human beings have not paid heed. And by and large, many governments and companies and all of us in some way or the other are guilty of that. Take the flooding that we've seen in Bangalore recently. Much of the flooding in our cities is being caused, of course, by global warming, because the rains are becoming, simple law of physics, warmer air can hold more moisture. And so naturally, the clouds become, even now as I'm talking, I think I could hear the sound of rain outside. So rain becomes more and more severe. More rain can fall inside a few weeks than that was expected to fall across a whole year sometimes. So, and then you can have droughts also at the same time, alternating. That's one thing. The other is our cities are also places where we've been recklessly violating the environment. For example, one of the reasons why many cities like Chennai and Mumbai and Bangalore keep flooding is because of what is called plastic waste. Plastic just comes and clogs the pipelines, the sewage lines and everything, and the stormwater drains. And there's nowhere else for the water to go. There are many other aspects to it. We don't have time to go into that, but so this is one example of how we've been reckless. And our dependence on plastics, and in this sense, we are all guilty, has been so excessive that plastics are now in ocean. They're in every ecosystem. The microplastics are now being found in small pieces of plastic, even in the Arctic ice and the Antarctic ice. And Pacific Ocean has two large, swirling, streams of plastic moving around in circles of some 5,000, 2,000, 3,000 kilometers, swirling round and round like a whirlpool of that size. All the plastic from different parts of the world get collected there because it's the largest ocean. And it affects the food chain, affects everything else. Food chains, all the food chains of the earth begin in the ocean. So this is one problem. Now, when it comes to guilt for all this, there are degrees of guilt, The least guilty are indigenous people, By this, we mean Adivasis and so on, like the Adivasis of India, the Australian Aborigines, the tribes of the Amazon rainforest. They live the most ecologically friendly lives. And then the next would be our rural communities. And more guilty would be urban middle classes. That includes us. We want all the comforts of life. And so our lifestyles, then upper classes with even higher consumption lifestyles. So the result, of course, is that the price is being paid, that we pay a price in terms of the health of the planet, which means automatically our own health, as I just showed you. You know, everything is interconnected. So what should we do then in this context? I would think guilt is a good place to start. We should all feel guilty. And once we do that, we can start doing things, whatever we can, whenever possible, to the extent possible, to the maximum extent possible, reduce our what is called carbon footprint through lifestyle changes, etc. For example, our consumption patterns will need to change. And there are lots of things that people, environmentalists and ecologists, who must be taken seriously, suggest to us. For one thing, planting more trees. And this is connected also with rebuilding societies and economies, in the sense that, as I told you, we can have greener jobs, as I pointed out. In the future, perhaps many of you young people could become green entrepreneurs. Someone recently found I remember that somewhere in the 1980s, for one of the Olympics, someone in Kerala had a brilliant idea at the Barcelona Olympics. He said, look, we in Kerala we have a lot of coconuts, so why do you want plastics out there for your ice creams? We can, with a simple machine, we can actually smoothen out the coconut shell and, kind of make a product that is biodegradable, unlike plastic, which nature cannot break down. And so he managed to get a contract for that, you see. So, because someone in Barcelona who was in charge of this felt that this was a good idea, planet helping idea. And because if you throw a coconut shell out, nature knows what to do with it. Nature breaks it down. But if you throw a plastic cup out, it can survive for a long time. But the greater danger is it will break up into microplastics, get into the air, get into water, etc. So we need to work on these things. I need to, you need to, keep reducing as much as possible our dependence on this, and keep increasing the 3 R's in our lives. Reuse, reduce, reuse, and recycle. So it comes the whole question of societies and economies. We often wonder which one is the subset of which. Sometimes, what's happening today is that we have reduced societies to economies when it should be the other way around. The economy is a subset of society and not the other way around. But unfortunately, today we have created a system where the economy decides how societies should be. And I could go on about this, but we don't have that kind of time today. But we could. So our models of development must change. For that, you've got the United Nations has this sustainability development goals, SDGs. And there are, everyone talks about sustainable development, but it's not a very easy thing. And so the challenges are high, but human beings have been known to meet challenges in the past and in the future too. Therefore, we have no choice but to meet these challenges and bring about large magnitudes of changes. So take sustainability, like, for example, fossil fuels industries right now, to transition from fossil fuels to cleaner fuels like solar and wind also bring their own challenges, but it must be done. And so the nature of the economy will change. Jobs will be lost in one sector to be gained in another sector. So all of these things will be the challenges in the future. And I hope we will all, as citizens, as governments, as corporations, as societies, as communities, as religions, pay great attention to this because all of us are guilty and we all need to work hard to be the change we want to see in the world going forward. With that, I'll end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think you began your session stating that you don't have the expertise as in the field of economics, but I think listening to you for the last 45 minutes, I think you do have expertise in this particular subject, and you very clearly stated as to how we need to change our approach, especially from the guilt. You began with stating how because of the construction of dams, how these people are displaced and what they need is land. And then which rightfully belongs to them. But unfortunately, we have not been able to give it, especially when we say the state has not been able to give land to those people from whom we have taken away the land in the name of development and construction of dams and things. And later you moved on to say state that the change should begin from us with a guilt. And you also talked about how microplastics are a big menace today in the society and then damaging our environment. And also giving us an insight on how we can move forward with sustainable approaches, especially in terms of going for cleaner and greener energy, and also emphasizing on how the solution to this is achieving the sustainable development goals, which are given by the UN. So I think it was a wonderful session for all of us, and I'm sure our students have really benefited, and I personally have benefited from your talk. Thank you so much, sir. Dear students, now we have another 12 minutes for any question answer session. So you can post your questions in the chat box, and sir will be willing to answer it. If you have any questions or clarification, you can post it in the chat box. I see a lot of students posting their register numbers. Please do not post your register number until the vote of thanks is over. So please post your register number only after vote of thanks. Right now, I request only students who have questions to post your questions.
Will you be able to read out the questions to me? They come.
Yeah, yes, I'll be able to read out. Sir.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's one question, sir.
Yeah.
What can we do to reduce the fast fashion and the culture of consumerism?
Can you repeat that?
What can we do to reduce the trend of fast fashion and the culture of consumer? And this question is by Ms. Rekha.
Okay. Now, this is a good question and a challenging one in that as we reflect on our own lifestyles, all of us need to make decisions about our consumption patterns. One of the things that can be done, of course, is to work on reducing our dependence on as many things as possible. For example, we live in an economy that's a kind of throwaway economy, where, the other day I went to look for a replacement for a charger for my phone. And the company said that we don't make those chargers anymore because we now have new models. When I told them, look, I have an old model, I don't want to throw it away. They said, what's the problem? You just upgrade it to a new model. We have all kinds of buyback policies and so on. I said, no, I'm happy with what I already have. I don't want more than that because it serves all my basic needs. My real joy, comes from other things, from reading, from listening to music, from being with friends and having conversations. I don't need the phone to that extent to give me that kind of joy. So I'm quite okay. And it's nothing to do with my status. I'm quite happy to be seen with a very old model phone or whatever, because this is adequate to my purpose. But the logic of the industry is such that they want you to throw something out to get a new one all the time. So the first thing we need to do as citizens is to build resistance within ourselves to this trend and to be rational about things. Do I really need this product? If I'm going to use it just for once or twice or something, or if it's going to be parked somewhere or eventually on my shelf or in my wardrobe for months together without use, why do I need it? So there are books, there's many books that are being written about how to live a minimalist lifestyle. So we have to minimize these things and maximize other things like spending more time with friends, spending quality time with family, reading more, and doing more creative things. There are many simple creative things that one can do. I'll give you one small example. Of in the world of toys, for example, there are many toy shops that have a wide array of highly sophisticated gadgets for children. So some of them have models of cars which are all full perfect scale models of cars, battery operated and so on, and costing a bomb. And some parents go and buy these things for their children. What happens is that the kid plays with the car for at the most the toy car for at the most 1 week or 2 weeks, and after that it's thrown in some corner. And then the whole thing is a waste, really, ultimately in the long run, because it's so short-lived. But on the other hand, I have seen construction workers' children. The construction workers are busy working, and these kids have been left with sticks and stones and a little piece of fabric and stuff like that. And the endless hours of joy these children have with these simple things. Amazing. Actually, the reason is this: the toy car, the manufactured car, comes with the story built in. You can't do anything more. It's not flexible. On the other hand, a block of wood in the hand of a child can be one moment a truck, another moment, because the child is bringing his imagination to bear. Modern, highly complicated toys rob the child of the opportunity to use his or her imagination to transform simple things like fabrics and blocks of wood and sticks and stones and so on into different things, and also prevents children from playing together. So in fact, the best toys are the cheapest and simplest ones, which you don't have to even, they are free actually. Nature gives you those. So why do you need these things? But for this, we need a spiritual revolution, all over the world, where we set our priorities right and go for the things that really bring joy rather than these artificial things. Of course, I'm not saying that one should not buy it once in a while or so on. Even for example, junk food, for example, no harm in once in a blue moon going to a McDonald's or something. But if that becomes a regular habit, you look at all the packaging that is involved, that you and I become guilty of all that packaging, which is destroying nature, plastics, cardboard, this, that, and the other. So minimize these things and maximize the simpler things, which give us greater joy. I would think that would be the way forward.
Thank you, sir, for wonderfully explaining that and making us realize what we need to buy things for utility and not for prestige.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, sir. There's one more question, sir. Several researchers state that most of the effects of global warming are due to the policies of 4 or 5 big companies. What policies should be enforced to reduce the effect of carbon despite the legislative restrictions you mentioned?
Okay, that's also a good question. I don't know whether I'm competent to answer that. I don't think I am. But from my own understanding and reading, the thing is this: these big companies, they resist legislations, and they have a way of subverting all these things, as I told you earlier, because of sheer lobbying power, and that. The only way is for civil society action, awareness building through education and so on. These companies should be called to account in the public forum for resisting, the regulations and for scaling down. For example, at the moment, the oil companies, the fossil fuel companies, some of them are doing something to be fair to them, but many are actually resisting and doing everything they can to lobby for continued use of fossil fuels and to lobby against alternative energy sources. So this must be brought to the world's attention through good journalism, through education in our classrooms, so that more and more people keep bombarding these companies, and in a sense, I would say shaming them, so publicly, as villains. The thing is this, that one of the things that these big corporations have is who are they accountable to, as I told you earlier, and then also their notion of the time frames. The thing about the time frame is that everything is meant for now. Profits now, expansion now. What about future generations, unborn generations? The companies don't care two hoots for them. So this planet has to be. Someone said among the Native American tribes, somebody said, we have not inherited this planet from our ancestors. We have borrowed it from our children. So the companies don't care for those things. So I would think that in all possible forums, these things should be exposed so that it makes an impact makes a dent on them. And when investors start pulling out from these companies because of greater awareness, then they will come around. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for wonderfully answering that question. I remember one of the greatest definition of sustainable development, which says sustainable development is meeting the needs of the present generation without compromising on the needs of the future generation.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Unfortunately, companies don't care about it.
Yeah.
So we have one more question, sir. I think that will be the last question, though we have two. Due to lack of time, I will be stating this as the last question, sir. So in your opinion, what are the gaps you see in terms of our awareness of sustainable measures and our choices? How can we address them?
Yeah, okay. Now, each one of us, needs to do whatever we can. So ask every day, for example, every decision that we take, we must say if something is unavoidable, then you can't do a thing. Like, for example, you've got to go somewhere far away. You need to use a car or whatever. But alternatives, unless, of course, if you're young and fit and able, for example, can you think of if the distance is not more than 3-4 kilometers or whatever? Can you think of walking instead of taking your bike? Unless it's an emergency or something like that. Or a greater distance. If it's a greater distance, one understands the need for motorized transport. And young people need exercise, I find that young people today, are so addicted to speed on their motorbikes. Once in a blue moon, that's fine. But if that becomes a daily practice, then you are adding, your carbon footprint is expanding all the time. So on the other hand, your body needs physical exercise. So seize every opportunity you have to walk or to bicycle or whatever. And perhaps in the future, we need to depend more on modes of public transport whenever possible. The other thing, of course, is buy local as much as possible. Today, we live in cities where our suburbs are kind of self-sufficient. So most of the things are available within walking distance, and be happy with what you get, closer home. In fact, you can get virtually everything closer home instead of making long trips to other places to pick up something that you can anyway get nearby. So these are, I just give you some small examples, but I think each one of us is at the moment challenged to keep being very deliberate about every action of ours. Each action, asking ourselves whether this will increase my carbon footprint or decrease. Some of it is unavoidable, I know, but to the extent possible, each one of us can make these decisions.
Thank you, sir. I think in the course of answering that question, you also gave us some tips to have a healthy life, especially for youngsters like our students.
Yeah.
So that was wonderfully presented.
Yeah, it's a double benefit, your own health and the planet's health at the same time.
Yes. Thank you, sir. I think with that, we come to the end of the second session, that is on the webinar. First of all, I would again thank you for accepting to be the resource person for the second session of our today's webinar. And your insights were really great and inspiring. And also it was more of tips to us on how we can benefit by contributing towards
one small thing. Remember, I told you about this green entrepreneurship. Yes. I think this should be promoted in colleges like ours because young people have ideas. So I told you that I gave you the example of that in the 1980s of that fellow who thought of coconut shells. Think of various ways of, so perhaps that should be promoted.
Yes. I think we will definitely try to do it. I'm sure students have forums like EDCell where they can express their ideas.
Yes.
Yes. So that I think that's something that we need to look at in the present context, especially green entrepreneurship is something that we all need to look at. Yes. As Josephites, I'm sure our students will come up with their great ideas and make it a reality in the future.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. On behalf of St. Joseph's Evening College, especially Father Brian, the director and rector of BJAS, Dr. Paul Newman, the principal, Ms. Dorothy Deepa, the vice principal, and the organizing committee, and especially on behalf of our students, I wholeheartedly thank you, Cherian sir, for enlightening our students with your vast knowledge that you have on this particular topic. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. So shall I leave?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Dear students, please note you are expected to type your register number in the chat box now so that we can consider it for the attendance, and then you can leave. Thank you, dear students, for all that you have done. I request all the students to please type your register number in the chat box before you leave. So you can, once you type your register number, you can leave. So thank you, everyone. Take care and have a pleasant weekend.